All right, let's get into the advanced settings of dealing with how to set up Wi-Fi and making sure it's secure. What I've got here pulled up is an ASUS control panel, and I want to point out the things that are the same regardless of the router that you're using or the Wi-Fi access point router that you're using. So this is ASUS's interface. Maybe you're using TP-Link, maybe you got Netgear, D-Link. There's a lot of them out there. Maybe you got a Cisco right there, but what you're doing with it is the same. You have a place where you are naming your wireless. You have a place that these days basically allows you to split out your wireless channels, frequencies into different networks. And as I pointed out in the other video, the reason why you do that is because if you have older stuff, then it won't be able to connect. It'll try and fail on some of those devices, especially when they're really cheap. Also, routers are getting there, but the standard router, when a slower device connects to that network, it slows everybody else down as well. So you could leave that one name and hope that your router is robust enough to talk to that device on that slow channel, that old slow channel, and then talk to you on the newer, faster one. Or you can look that stuff up and find out actually, or just split it out and say, okay, well, here's my 2.4 channel. That's the slower one. It has a wider range, but it's slower. And that's the one that, my smart sockets are on and my smart lights are on and that they're all on that because they can't do 5 gig. That's why. The newer stuff is coming out. They'll do 2 and 5, and then you can just say, here's my network. Here's the name, here's the password. We let this device and this device figure out how to talk to each other the fastest way possible. And that's great. Okay, so let's take a look. Here we are showing we're connected, showing that there's 6 clients. Over here, it says that it's dual band Smart Connect, and this is what it is listed as the network. Again, this is something that you would want to change so that people wouldn't look and go, oh, that's an Asus, and they never changed the name. As a matter, it's an Asus XT8, and they never changed it. So you would want, if you're at my house, maybe you might do something like that, make Wi-Fi, change the name on it. Let's talk about authentication methods. 3 is what you want it to be on. That's really what you want is 3. Open system obviously is you don't hack it, it's just open. WPA2 has been compromised. Now, the enterprise ones are only for businesses that have some server that this is going to connect to and talk to and authenticate things between. So you can't use those. At home, you have to use the personals. WPA has been hacked, so WPA 1 and 2, these are easier to hack. If you can't run 3, and why wouldn't you be able to? Hey, remember I mentioned those the old sockets and the lights, and they're really, really cheap, and it only cost you 20 bucks for 5 of them? No, that's an exaggeration. But yeah, they were really cheap. Yeah, those don't know how to do WPA3. So if you have this set standard WPA3, all that stuff stops working because it can't authenticate. And you can put in the passphrase all you want on those devices, but they won't work because they're not WPA3 compatible. So you pick 2 and 3. That's what you want. All those little tiny devices have been made since WPA2 was a standard, so that should not be a problem. So you let WPA2 and 3. And as I said, if you could, and if you don't have any of that stuff, you go straight to WPA3 totally, because that one is way more secure. All right, the encryption you usually will not change, and you'll notice I have no options, so I can't change it. And then this is the pass key, and 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 is a really lame pass key. So we're going to change that into something better, like I showed in the last video. So this time I'll call it J44 exclamation PAWQ 5 7 YT or YT. You just That's definitely not something I would use. I wouldn't use that as a password. It would be something else. You pick a phrase like they were showing, but you separate that phrase. So, let's spend a little time on this. So we would put something like, let's see, I, I love something like that. So I know I love Star Wars, and the only part I have to remember is it's an underscore, an exclamation point after love, and a nine and an exclamation point. And maybe that's still too hard for me, right? So there you go. Now this is the dual band Smart Connect again. So if I have devices that can't do that, then I have to go, oh, I need to change this. And then it takes me to the wireless screen. This is where it's taken me to, and I get all of the stuff. I get everything. Now, I'm not going to go through and set it all up again, but you notice you get a 5 gig channel here that you can use, and you get a 2.4 here, and then you get a 2.4 here and a 5. So you set up this 2.4 and 5, which is kind of like, here's my standard channel. And then you can actually set up others, which is fantastic. At this point, right, we're really getting into stuff. And a big question people are going to ask is, do I need to do this? And the answer is no. Now, again, you got smart devices that on your new network can't seem to communicate. Then you go in and say, yeah, I'm going to have to come in here and I'm going to have to say, look, here's my 2.4 here. And this is what my 2.4 is going to be. You don't need to change the wireless mode. This is the faster Wi-Fi 6 mode, which you may have to disable, just giving you a heads up. This is the new stuff. And so you may have to disable that because of your old information. You're probably going to stick with two, but I say two and three. What this means is that it negotiates in that little handshake. It says, can you do three? Yeah, I can do three. Okay, let's do three because it's better. Then you change that passphrase. And then protected management frames, you don't need to worry about that. They explain what that means, but you don't need to worry about that. You don't need to change the channel bandwidth either. 2040 means backwards compatible, just so you know, it'll do either one. And this is you can change these channels, but that's another thing that you don't have to do any of that. You just leave them on auto and let them go, and you hit apply, and that really is what you need to work with here. That is the total of what you need to work with. There are so many other things on here that you can work with, but most of this is not going to work unless you have the ability, like you have a radius server. You don't have that, so you don't set that up. You don't have to deal with the LAN settings. That is already set for you. You can change it if you want. You can change that IP address and the subnet mask, but you don't have to. You don't even have to change this name because this is your local area network. This is your internal network. So you don't even have to change it. You could change it if you wanted. You don't have to change WAN. This is how you're connecting to your IP. And you shouldn't change this unless it's not working. And before you change any of it, if it's not working, you would talk to your ISP and say, what are these settings that I need to put in? This is not something that you would have to come into and say, well, my internet's not working. I wonder if these WAN settings are wrong. No, that is set the way it is. That was set the way it was when it was working, and it should not have changed in that. So you shouldn't have to mess with this at all. And then yeah, each one of these has here's your VPN. You want to enable VPN. Some of these routers include VPN, so everything coming out of that network is secure. However, I will say that usually they want you to pay for this. So usually this is not a free thing. Usually if you turn this VPN on, then you're going to have to put in your username and password, and then they bill you so often. So not normal. There are open VPN things out there, but that's something that you would need to do research on and set up yourself. And yeah, there's even your firewall settings in here. So when we talk about firewall, this is where you're enabled or not. You would not want to disable that firewall. The only time you would want to disable this firewall is if you bought a special firewall device that includes more than what this has. And then you would say, okay, well, I want to turn on this other firewall, so I need this one off. Otherwise, yeah, you don't want that. You don't really want to change anything on here. I'm just coming here to let you know that, hey, most of the time, there's all these settings for firewalls, especially if you didn't buy the cheap access point router. If you bought one that's mid-range and up, you can come in here and you can actually filter things and you can do keyword filtering. You can do network service filtering. That's the port 80 and everything else. In other words, you can come in here and program that firewall to enable and disable certain things just from the firewall. Now, a lot of higher end ones will also have content control, meaning that it will allow you to say, I don't want this kind of content, violent content, adult content. I don't want that. And it'll block it right here at this router, which is fantastic. I think that's very well worth it. This one does not have that, but others do. So down here, we're down under administration, wireless router mode, AI mesh mode default. So this is, you wouldn't ever change this either. But if again you had a whole nother firewall, then you might just put this in access point or something like that. But you definitely would want to read up on what do they mean by media bridge? What do they mean by AI mesh mode? What do they mean by that? However, here is the firmware upgrade right there. You poke around really until you find that. And this firmware needs to be checked on. So you hit that, check signature. And for me, it's not going to work because it's not connected really. But you hit check, and if there is a new one, then you check, hit check update here. And if there's a new one, there is, and then another button appears there and you tell it, go ahead and update that. The firmware these days is very easy to update, and mine has an auto. So I could just set it and say, yes, automatically update that. I take that chance. All right, those updates can always just mess something up, but I take that chance because there's more chance of hacking than there is of the update screwing something up. And so, yeah, you tell it check for the update, and then if there is one, you say, yeah, download, go ahead and update the system. And a lot of them you have to do that manually, so you'd want to come in and check. And where is it? Well, usually it's under administration. Usually there's an administration button on the side or across the top, and that's how you would get to it. You can also restore and save your settings. So before you do the update, you could hit save settings and it will actually save the settings to a little special place or ask you to download the settings to your computer. And you can look at the system log. So you can look and see who has been trying to hack me. That's what this is really. Now, these days, a lot of them will not allow you to change what it's really logging. But on the higher end systems, you can tell it log everything, log only things that are hacks, that kind of thing. But yeah, you can look through it. And if you don't want to look through it, you can copy and paste it out and do searches on it. And then there's a wireless. So that's the general log. The wireless log is who's attaching to you wirelessly, who's doing that, what channels are set up, and so on. And your connections over here. That's who is connected. So who is connected to this machine and connected into the network. So that's what that'll show you. Port forwarding, you usually don't ever have to mess with, but that's you actually changing. I want you to take something coming from the outside that's asking for a specific port. I want you to take that and shove it to this certain machine. And that's dangerous to do because then that machine better have a really good login. Otherwise, you're in trouble. The other stuff that a lot of them have are actually, here's AI protection, not protection from AI, but, just try to figure out if things are going good and bad. So there's other things that you can come in and look at. And those things that are not in the advanced settings, you can go through and turn it on and say, okay, well, let's see how that works. Oh, I don't like how that works. I'm going to go back and change it. You can do that. This one is quality of service. So maintaining the quality of service based on what you want, for instance, video streaming or gaming, you can set that quality of service. The one I have is really advanced, and you just hit game mode, and then it just puts everything that's gaming up above everything else, which I don't get much time to do anymore, but it's cool. I should have mentioned AI protection, right? This is where you can turn on parental controls. You can actually filter traffic through this. Most of the mid-range to upper range has this ability to actually filter traffic for search words and what they would call a blacklist and a whitelist. So basically, blacklisting a ton of sites that you don't want kids to be able to get to. Uh, it's it's really good. Some of it you have to buy. Some of it it's just built in. They use their own stuff, and it's a part of getting the router. And because you got their router, you get it, and it's free. But here you go. Right here's what this is basically saying is we want to filter adult traffic. We don't want any instant messaging coming through here, and P2P file transfer, which is peer-to-peer file transfers, streaming entertainment, maybe you're like, oh, that's okay. We'll go ahead and let that. And then you can add more. Um, Whoops, I'm adding a filter. Sorry. What this is doing is pulling up who's out here. So let's say, okay, the A's is PC, it puts in the MAC address, and then you add that. And now you are auditing that machine, and you are making sure that adult content can't get there. They can't instant message from that machine, and they can't use peer-to-peer, which is, file downloads between two systems. They can't do that. Streaming entertainment is allowed. They're not going to like that. You can see it's powered by Trend Micro here, and it's just built into this router. So there's nothing here saying you need to make sure this gets updated and what's your license agreement and pay us yearly or anything like that. This is harder to get around than having it on the machine. If you have, I don't even, that's not really in this class, but if you install something on your computer that's controlling this kind of adult content, then you have to make sure that you're not logged in as administrator, because then they can modify things. And a lot of kids will go out and figure out how to turn off the service. And unless you got something that's really robust, they'll figure out how to turn that off. And then they bypass that whole thing. So putting it on here, if you protected your password and it's actually out on the router, then that's going to stop stuff from getting in. Another thing you can also do is change your DNS information. So I'm going to show you where that is since I'm on this topic. Right down underneath wireless. Here we go. Let's check. It's wireless or WAN. Let's see. Let's all the roaming. Now let's just setting up the stuff. See, I've already forgotten. Let's go to our WAN information, dual WAN, DMZ, dynamic DNS. Let's see what we got under that. Yeah, so we don't normally have dynamic on. Where was it, guys, that we actually can put in the IP? I can't remember. Oh yeah, under administration. These are always in different places too. They always are in different places. Actually, is it system? Sir, DNS queries. It's not. I can't remember where it is in here. We're looking for where we want to change our IP information, and this is definitely IP version 6, and that's usually either disabled or on. I tend to turn mine on, even though my ISP doesn't use it. Is it firewall? Where did they put this? Again, it's always under something, just depends. Should be under LAN or wireless. Oh yeah, that's our IP information, and then this is the DHCP information. So right here. Okay, so what ends up happening? Sorry, it took me a while to get there. Um, what ends up happening is that your ISP passes down this DNS information to you, and so that's why there's nothing filled out here. It'll just pass on whatever was up above. However, if you want to control traffic, then you can actually look up DNS content filtering. That's one of the ways to look it up. And you can pay for these services. or there's actually free ones. There's Nord. OpenDNS is a big one. And so let's look at their setup guide. There they are. So there's OpenDNS, and you can actually create Cisco runs this, and there's different levels. So there's a free level, which is probably good enough for you. And then you point that DNS information. So over here, you put in those numbers that they gave us right here. So the top one would be 208, we'll just copy it. Copy that, come over to our router, paste it. So that'll force it to go to that DNS. So what'll happen is when the query goes out, it'll go to this DNS, which is filtering the information. So this is a whole nother area, and I would do it because you can do it easily. Oh yeah, there we go. Geek Flare has a few of them. So Control D, powerful DNS filtering, Titan HQ. So you would look at these Cloudflare Gateway Safe DNS. I think I've used Safe DNS before, and they basically give you the IP number that you are going to put in right here. But I'd start with OpenDNS if you're going to do that. You put that in, and it will automatically use their DNS even if you don't have an account with them. When you make an account with them, it allows you to control what you want filtered, and that's the deal. So it hits that, and it says, "Oh, do I know who you are? Oh, your IP, I know who you are. Here, let's apply this filter that you went ahead and set up. This will still filter." So if you're interested in that, I would turn on their filter and right here, and I'd also turn on this DNS filtering. That's extra level of protection. Anyway, if you want me to make a video on that kind of thing, let me know because there's things you can do on the phones and everything. Protecting kids is pretty important these days. You know, there's been a lot of things about Roblox and on and on. There's a lot of things parents need to be concerned about. So let me know. But yeah, main things that you have to do to sum it up, you got to put in that IP for your LAN. If you want it changed, it'll automatically do it. So this IP has to be set up. If you want to change your DNS information, then this is where you set that up right here. The WAN is going to set up itself. You don't have to worry about this. The major thing that they're going to have you do is set up the wireless, and that's where you're putting in something better than what they've got. And then you're also changing the password. So again, they lead you through all that, but if you ever need to change it, this is where you would come in and change it. Right? That I change this user ID, put a whole new password in, and that'll save you. Last little note: use USB settings. These have little USB ports on them, and you can plug in hard drives that have movies and things on them, and it'll just share it out on the network. It's just automatically there. That's what those settings are. And you can also usually plug in a printer and share the printer out off of there. Thanks for watching, and we will talk with you later. Sorry I'm so orange, but it's dark here now.